This is Research Like a Pro, episode 76, RootsTech and Genealogy Education, an interview with Amberly Beck. Welcome to Research Like a Pro, a genealogy podcast about taking your research to the next level, hosted by Nicole Dyer and Diana Elder, accredited genealogy professional. Diana and Nicole are the mother-daughter team at FamilyLocket.com and the creators of the Amazon best-selling book, Research Like a Pro, a Genealogist's Guide. I'm Nicole, co-host of the podcast. Join Diana and me as we discuss how to stay organized, make progress in our research, and solve difficult cases. Let's go. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the show. I'm Nicole Dyer, co-host of the Research Like a Pro genealogy podcast. I'm here with accredited genealogist Diana Elder and our guest, Amberly Beck. Hi, Diana.
Hi, Nicole. Hi, Amberly.
Hi, Diana and Nicole. I'm delighted to join you today. Thank you for inviting me.
We are so glad that you could join us. We're excited to talk to you about RootsTech and genealogy education and all the fun things that we've done together in the past. Let's do our listener spotlight real quick. It's from DWH, and this listener says, "Great format, very engaging and informative, an excellent podcast for genealogists. The topics are extremely helpful and informative. The guests are well chosen, and the hosts are both knowledgeable and engaging. I look forward to each new episode." Thank you for writing to us, DWH, and we're happy that you think our guests are well chosen. We really are excited to talk with our guest today, Amberly. So let me introduce Amberly. Amberly and I originally met in the blogosphere. She writes at thegenealogygirl.blog and shares lots of great posts about her research, photos, and lots of helpful tips. We met, I think, for the first time in person at RootsTech, and we worked together when I was doing the Family History for Children blog link up, and she messaged a little bit back and forth there and participated. And then we participated in the certification discussion group, which is a study group for learning how to prepare for certification through the Board for Certification of Genealogists. And then after that, we enjoyed working together so much we continued studying together on mastering genealogical proof and did a study group with that. And now we're still doing a study group on the NGSQ, where we read an article every month and talk about it. So I've really enjoyed working with Amberly and learning about, learning about genealogy and increasing our knowledge together. I've learned a lot from her. So Amberly, tell us a little bit about your professional work that you do and your research for clients.
Yeah, so I do take client research. I love to do that. I've had some really interesting experiences with that. And I also work for From Research as one of their genealogy research specialists.
Wonderful. What is their website?
It's from fromresearch.com, and they provide a really interesting product. It's a book, or it's just research that is used as loyalty gifts for large corporations, for their wealthy clients who, they don't know what to buy for them as loyalty gifts. So we research their family and they're presented with this beautiful book. So it's a really unique and interesting job.
Wow, that is really unique. How neat. And I would love to get a gift like that. I mean, it would be so neat to just have somebody surprise you with.
Well, it's not a surprise. They find out that they are receiving the gift, and then they have to give us lots of information to start with so that we can create something that includes all of their family.
Oh, that really makes sense, because it would really handicap you if it had to be a surprise, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so I have some questions about that, Amberly. I'm so intrigued. Do you ever have to use DNA when you get into a project that maybe there is not a family line to work with?
So I did their first DNA project this fall. And the reason that we included DNA is the person that I was researching for, his mother was adopted, and he was interested in both her line of the people who raised her and then also her genetic family.
Oh, that's so fun. Wow, I love that. Well, let's jump into one of our topics for the day, and that is RootsTech. Nicole and I love RootsTech, and we know that you do too because we are fellow ambassadors. But I'm just curious, what was your first experience at RootsTech? When did you first go?
So, my first in person RootsTech experience was in 2016.
So that is about the same year we started going. Were you an ambassador that year?
I was not. I just attended for the first time by myself. I had been planning to go with a friend, but her mom passed away. So I went by myself, which I'd been nervous to do because I don't like crowds and I'm pretty introverted. So large gatherings are a little bit tiring for me. But I went anyway, and I was so glad I did.
Was that the year that one of the keynote speakers was the man who rode his motorcycle down the aisle of the whole audience? Were
Oh,
you there for that one?
I was there for that one. It might be that year. I'm not sure though.
That was Nicole and my first year, and I remember just going, "Wow, this is amazing. This was so fun." And we were just blown away by the keynote speakers and the excitement, the music, so much energy there. And then the crowds are a little bit to contend with. But, how did you do with the crowds and your people issues?
It was fine. The energy of Roots Tech is really like no other conference I've attended. And you're surrounded by other genealogists and family history enthusiasts of all experience and skill levels. So it really feels like being at home, even for those who are really introverted. I felt comfortable right away. I loved all of the energy and excitement. And the thing that's great is you can feel that all the people around you have a deep love for their families, their ancestors. So it started out great, but it got even better when I went to my first class with Tom Jones. That was actually the second session I attended at that Roots Tech.
Oh my goodness. And what was Tom talking about in that session?
His lecture was titled Inferential Genealogy, Deducing Ancestors' Identities Indirectly. And that was literally the first time I had ever heard anyone talk about using indirect evidence. And I was mesmerized. I was writing notes as fast as I could, and every single word of that lecture was exactly what I needed right then. And while I was listening, I just kept thinking about my third great grandmother, Esther Bruyette. There are no records for her life that name her parents. And I had built this whole case to prove who they were using indirect evidence, even though I didn't know what that was. And I thought I was still searching for a document that explicitly named her parents to prove what I already thought I knew. But as I sat there in Tom's lecture, I realized that I didn't need direct evidence to prove identity. And so I couldn't wait to go back home and revisit all of my work with fresh eyes and a new understanding. And that class totally changed my genealogy life. And not just because I learned that I was already doing some great things, but I learned more about how to move to the next step. And, Tom is an amazing master teacher, but there were two things that he said that really stuck with me. The first one was he talked about his own research life. And he said that changed when he started reading the NGSQ. And he said that prior to that, he'd been researching for 30 years, and those years were mostly a waste. And once he started studying the articles in the NGSQ, everything changed for him. And so I'm sitting there listening to this guy that is telling me all of these things that are just singing right into my soul. And I thought, well, if he's saying that, that's probably true for me too. And so I didn't right away join NGS, but I did. And I, of course, study their articles out of the queue. But the other thing he talked about was attending genealogical institutes and encouraged us to attend them. So I also took his advice on that.
Well, I love that you talk about Tom Jones and his whole indirect evidence, because working in the South with the kind of research that Nicole and I have, that is what we use all the time. And I have felt similar to that, always searching for that one document that is never going to show up because it was never created in the first place.
Right.
And it's wonderful to know that we can prove our lines using the indirect evidence. And I love that you did a study group on mastering genealogical proof, because when I was working on accreditation, that was the book that I worked through. And I just did it on my own. I'd read the chapter and answer all the questions, then check my work in the back. But I felt like I learned so much working through that book. So if any of our listeners are intrigued by what we're talking about here and you've never heard of Mastering Genealogical Proof, which is written by Tom Jones, I highly recommend either doing a study group like Amberly did, or just getting the book and working through it on your own. You'll learn so much. It really is from a master genealogist.
Well, that's wonderful. I love that you went to that Tom Jones class and had such a great experience. I think we all have those moments in our genealogy lives where it was a turning point and we just learned something so valuable that it really helped us to propel forward.
So I actually wrote about that first experience on my blog. So I know Nicole will put that link in the show notes. But for your listeners, if they can relate to anything I was saying, they might want to read that, because I talk a little bit about my previous experience and how I was ready in that moment. And it might help your listeners consider what a good next step for them might be.
Oh, that's so great. And I will definitely put that in the show notes so they can go read your article because it is such a great article. I was going to follow up and ask about the rest of the classes at your first RootsTech experience. Did you feel kind of sad that they weren't as amazing as that second session, or did you still enjoy it all?
I did enjoy it all. And I actually adjusted my schedule and I went to 2 more classes that he taught. And I bought his book, Mastering Genealogical Proof, out of the expo hall. But it was everything about that experience was really good. And he, of course, was the highlight. But there were so many other things that I wanted more information about. And I did a good job choosing my classes. So everything about that conference experience was great.
That's such a good point. I think choosing our classes beforehand is really important at RootsTech because there are so many choices. And it's good to have some backups too, like you said, because you might want to change your schedule and adjust things. So you may need to have like second and third choices ready and prepared.
Yes.
So after you had that experience, it sounded like you were ready to go forward and take some of his suggestions. So tell us about how you continued your genealogy education after that.
Well, I attend RootsTech every year. I started going to more local conferences and family history fairs, and I started teaching a lot more. I'm excited this year. I've added the National Genealogical Society's Family History Conference to my schedule for 2020, and I'm delighted it's in Salt Lake City because I just live an hour south, so that's convenient for me. But I actually purchased their recordings from their 2019 conference because of a suggestion you made, Nicole. You mentioned that you had done it in 2018, and that really was one of my best educational choices for 2019. I was a little nervous because I need subtitles for most things, but the quality of the audio is great. It's nice and clear and plenty loud, and I like to listen to those while I'm on the treadmill. So I'm not giving up any extra time during my day to add that in. But it's been a great way to learn from people who I otherwise haven't been able to sit in a class that they taught. I attended SLIG for the first time in 2019 and I loved it. I have a conflict this year. I can't go in 2020, but I'll definitely be back in 2021. But I'm looking into the Summer Institute schedule because of that, and I'm hoping to fit one of those in. I've also participated in several study groups. Nicole and I did the certification discussion group together. That was started by Jill Morelli, but we attended the course that Carrie Taplin taught. It was excellent and just what I needed to help me plan my future genealogy education experiences to help me prepare to submit my portfolio to BCG. And then, Nicole, I loved the study group you put together for Tom's book, Mastering Genealogical Proof. Those chapter exercises were really rigorous. So I was glad to be in a group because it kept me accountable. I think you probably felt the same way too.
Yes, I loved our discussions, and I think when I started putting that all together, I was very ambitious, where I thought we could do like bonus exercises and extra reading. And as we got into it, I realized that there was plenty to read within that small book, and and sometimes we had to read his articles several times to really grasp what he was saying, because in the back there are, in the appendix he has a couple example articles, and then during the book you analyze those articles. Anyway, we had some fun extending our learning to additional articles in the NGSQ that had to do with DNA so that we could add in that element. But yes, it was very rigorous and I enjoyed it so much.
Me too. I learned so much. And I would say to your listeners, if you can find a study group for that book, do it. But it's a really brave person that will lead that study group, because those exercises at the end of the chapter are challenging. So you may not find a group for that, but it was awesome. And then Nicole and I are currently doing a study group that I put together. We study an NGSQ article every month, and I've really loved that. We're a tiny group of 4, and we're all on the same path working towards certification, and we have similar education backgrounds. So we're really kind of in the same place. So it's been really beneficial for us. So studying that is great. I also love, of course, research and writing. I've been taking on far more challenging research problems, both for myself and for clients. And I'm a lot more confident at coming up with good research questions and research plans ever since that Tom Jones class. And that, of course, leads to amazing genealogy conclusions. I'm a lot busier now than I was when I first started my blog, but I feel like writing my blog posts has allowed me to grow up as a genealogist. When you write for an audience of both people you know and you don't know, it really forces you to consider every word you use. You ask yourself more rigorous questions about your writing when you know that others will read what you wrote. So blogging has not only made me a better writer, but also a better genealogical writer. So even though I'm busy, I still try to post regularly on my blog. And of course, one of the amazing outcomes of that is the awesome cousin bait that I'm creating. I love those cousin connections that happen because of my blog, distant cousins that Google someone, end up on my blog page, and then they reach out to me. So that's been amazing.
That is amazing. And you have written so many articles about your family. I think that's such, like you said, it's such good practice for writing more, research reports and proof summaries and proof arguments, and just having all that experience with putting your research down in words. How wonderful.
Yeah, it's been great.
What would you recommend for others who want to expand their education?
That is a great question. There are so many genealogy education opportunities out there. So, my advice would be to lay a really strong foundation and then build on it in your specific areas of interest and in your areas of weakness. But finding the best next educational experience for you can be tricky. So I would encourage everyone to ask these 2 questions of other genealogists whenever you can. First, what genealogical educational experience made the biggest impact on you? And then, just listen to what they're sharing and ask follow-up questions. And then second, ask, what was your biggest genealogical accomplishment this year? And then follow up with what helped you accomplish that. We can learn so much from each other. And those answers will point us to new resources and learning opportunities. But my quick list for everyone of things to consider would be broken down. First, things for everyone. Make good use of free resources like the RootsTech video archive, the Family Search Wiki. You can learn a lot from there. And then consider some of the things that you would pay for, like a Legacy Family Tree webinar subscription. Their archive is filled with so many great webinars. And then look into courses like the ones that you and Diana have, your Research Like a Pro courses. And there are also courses offered by NGS. They have a great beginning course that's free to members, and then they have other paid courses that build on that basics course. But for those who are wanting to work towards certification or becoming a professional genealogist, definitely join the National Genealogical Society. Read the Q, attend their conference or purchase the recordings, regularly study genealogy reference works, and then find study groups to participate in. And I have to say, I love the BCG 10-minute methodology series. That's a great way to gain some knowledge in a quick little session on your phone or something. But whatever your listeners choose to do, it's really important to try to spend some time on genealogy education, at least weekly. And if you're more serious, daily. I mentioned that I like to listen to recordings or watch webinars while I'm on the treadmill. That's really easy to add to my day. But I also keep issues of the Q on my nightstand and one or two genealogy books I'm studying. And then I also like to spend a few minutes on Twitter each day looking at posts that have the hashtags genealogy or family history. It's quick, but you can learn from genealogists all over the world about different resources, and it just sort of expands the opportunities for you as you spend a few minutes there seeing what everyone else is talking about. And of course, it's just fun to get to know other genealogists from around the world.
I love all of those suggestions. I was typing down most of those so that I could put links in the show notes. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Really great list.
Amberly, I love that you talked about Twitter. I have a Twitter account and I have never thought to really use it for education like that.
Yeah.
And I love that. Wow, that's a really fun tip. So you mentioned genealogy reference books and that you have some that are on your stand, or I think you said you have on your stand some issues of the NGSQ, and I do that too. I have found that if I don't take time every morning to do some genealogy study, it just doesn't happen. So I try to do that for 30 minutes in the morning to read a little bit of the Q and to read. Right now I'm reading through Professional Genealogy, the new edition, because I'm a ProGen mentor, and I did the program when it was the old, the first edition of Professional Genealogy. And it's fun that we're talking about Tom Jones because I'm reading his chapter right now on evidence analysis. And when you talked about being a wordsmith and having every word count, doesn't that hold true with his writing and his work? You have to read his writing very concentratedly, if that's a word, because every single word is just packed with information and meaning. And I have just loved revisiting evidence analysis through his mind. It's been really fun. So I wanted to ask, what are some of your favorite genealogy reference books?
So the two that I pick up the most are Mastering Genealogical Proof by Tom Jones and Evidence Explained by Elizabeth Shown Mills. But I also often grab both editions of Professional Genealogy that you mentioned, and those are edited by Elizabeth Shown Mills, and the Genealogy Standards Manual, the new second edition that's published by the BCG. I have several others that I love, and I'm just starting to delve into more and more often, but there are so many great reference books out there, so just don't stop buying those. But I also have to give a shout out to those Genealogy Society publications for our areas of interest. I have a few that were put together by the Kankakee Valley Genealogical Society in Illinois that I pull off my shelf constantly. So get to know the local societies that exist now in the areas where your ancestors once lived.
I'd agree with that. In fact, it's kind of funny because I'm working on a project in England right now, and I just went to a genealogy Christmas party for the company that I contract with, and we all had to bring our favorite book and wrap it up, and did a little gift exchange. And so the book that I stole, because this was one of those parties where you can steal books, it was the English Bible, they call it, for genealogy reference. And I didn't have a reference book on England. And I thought, this is perfect. Even though it's not my area of accreditation, I don't do a ton of English research. I do English research, and I didn't have a reference book. So now I do.
Yeah.
So I totally agree that we can pick up these reference books whenever we're working on a project that has a stumped, or maybe if it's an area that is our brick wall locality. In fact, I wrote a little bit about one of the reference books that I discovered on Indian territory, Chickasaw Nation Indian territory, which is where all my paternal ancestors were. And I was so stumped about how to research in this area. And then I found this woman who had written a book about it, and I ordered the book. And that's one of my go-to books when I'm researching my family. You know, I pick it up and look and see what Nova had to say. The author was Nova Lemons, and I'm so grateful for those kind of books that are just little known but are perfect for whatever you're working in. So thank you for that great tip.
Yeah.
What is the book about England called? Now I'm so curious.
It is called Ancestral Trails. And the author is Mark D. Herber, and he goes into great detail on all the different kinds of records. So I know civil registration and I know about parish church records, but what I don't know so much about are the ins and outs of the court system in England and the probates, because they go back hundreds and hundreds of years. You know, it's so much different than our United States research, where we don't have that much going way back. So I'm really excited to have this. My research project right now is 20th century, so I won't be needing to delve into, you know, stuff in the 1600s. But Nicole, as we work in England, going back on those lines, maybe we can get really good at our English research.
Great idea, because, you know, I've been thinking about various options for what I can do for my certification case study. And one of the ideas that I have is English research in the 17 and 1800s. So maybe I'll need to borrow the book.
You are welcome to borrow the book.
I still haven't chosen my case study. Have you done that yet, Amberly?
I had one picked out, but then unfortunately I found a piece of direct evidence. So that one's gone and I need to find a new one.
Dang it.
Yeah.
It's like what you always hope for as a genealogist, a piece of evidence, but then you're like, oh no.
Exactly.
Can't use this.
So explain that for those of us who haven't done certification or don't know as much about it. So one of your parts of your portfolio, you need a case study with indirect evidence, I'm kind of inferring here.
Yes, exactly. So you can also do a case study that is two pieces of conflicting direct evidence, and then you work through and you're able to conclude, you know, what's correct about a person. But that's a little bit more difficult to find a good case like that. So most people choose to build a case using indirect evidence. And I had a great one. And then I found actually two pieces of direct evidence in really unusual places. I was digging deep into this ancestor's siblings. One of them wrote an autobiography and he named her in that. And then another sibling put together a collection of written family group sheets, that type of thing. And he named her in that, which isn't a super strong source, but now I have direct evidence. So I've got to pick a new case study.
That's so funny, because usually you'd be so excited to have found some evidence and you're like, dang,
exactly.
I didn't want to find that.
Right.
Good job doing your reasonably exhaustive research.
Thanks, Nicole.
Well, let's bring this full circle and go back to RootsTech, which is how we started our episode today. And you recently attended RootsTech London, so we wanted to ask you all about that. So how was it? What did you teach?
It was so great. My presentation was titled After the Scan, Online Preservation Your Family Can Find. And I loved it. It went really well.
So did you feel like RootsTech London was kind of a smaller group? I didn't hear like the information on how many people attended and stuff, but I'm guessing it was smaller.
It was smaller. I think the total attendees was just under 10,000. A lot of those were on Saturday, on the Family Discovery Day. But the venue was really cool. It's the Excel Center in London, and it has 3 floors that they utilized, mostly the first and the third. But in the Salt Palace for the RootsTech hosted in the US that we're used to, you know, it's a really big venue that's spread way out. So you have to walk sometimes a long way to get from one class to another that you would like to attend. But the Excel Center, all of the classrooms are concentrated. They're right together on the 3rd floor. So it didn't take as much time to transition because the classes were just side by side. So it was a great venue, just right for the number of people that attended.
Wow, that sounds really great. And 10,000 doesn't sound small at all.
No, it was good.
That is wonderful. So, what are some of the classes you attended?
Well, I tried to attend a class every class session. There were a couple that it didn't work out for me, but there were three that really had an impact on me. The first one was Robert Anderson's class called Tools for Testing Genealogical Proofs. That one is actually available as part of the virtual pass. So your listeners could choose to access that if they wanted to. And then Diane Southard's Ask the Wife, a DNA research strategy, and Johnny Pearl's Inferred Matching Techniques for Chromosome Mapping. So each of those three classes had some strategies or information that was relevant to my current project. So those three were the ones that really stood out to me.
Those sound like really good classes. And how great that one of them is available on the virtual pass. I'll have to put a link in the show notes so people can go check it out.
Yeah, he also talked about his book, and that was sort of a key focus in that class. So I'll make sure I send you a link to that specific book whose title I can't think of right now, but I ordered it and I'm really excited. It's one of my next ones to study.
Oh, great. Yeah, send me the link to that.
I will.
So, I heard that there was a very exciting keynote there. Donny Osmond, was he your favorite or was there somebody else that you liked more?
Oh, that is a funny question. So Donnie was on Saturday, and I actually was running late, and I couldn't sit with my friends, but I went over to the section for ambassadors and speakers, and you have to show your badge, and I just said, "Are there any seats left?" And he walked me to the front row, and I felt so guilty because some of my friends behind me like grew up. They had posters of Donnie on their walls, and I didn't. I'm too young. So I'm sitting front row, and I know there are like all these women, 6 or 8 rows behind me that would die to sit there. It was great, though. I did love Donnie. But my favorite was hands down Kadena Cox. I went into that keynote knowing almost nothing about her, so I didn't have any expectations, but she was completely delightful, so personable and authentic. She doesn't present like that regularly, so it felt like she was really inviting us into her story in such a personal way. She is remarkable, but also so down to earth and cheerful. I just could not help but love her.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you for sharing so that we can all now go watch these good
Yeah.
recommendations.
Well, I had to go watch the entire keynote of Donny Osmond because I grew up with him. I was one of those
Yeah.
women probably who would have liked to be on the front row. Actually, I didn't have any posters in my room. Yeah, that was a little bit before my time. But I was intrigued with that, and I had not heard of the other people. So now I want to go watch the one that you just recommended, Kadena. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So fun. Well, RootsTech London, oh my goodness, we really wanted to go. So maybe if they do it again, we can go next time because Nicole and I both did study abroad there, and London is like our second home, and we love it there. But it didn't work out this year. So thanks for sharing.
Sure.
Now I am just noticing that I believe you're teaching the same class at RootsTech 2020 in Salt Lake City that you did in London. Is that correct?
Yes. I've taught it twice. I'm teaching it this Sunday at the BYU Family History Library, and then I'll teach it again at a local family history fair. So Roots Tech in February will be my 5th time delivering that presentation, and I'm really fond of it. I love it. I am the current steward of the photo collections of both of my grandmothers. My collection is massive. I have an entire closet full of photos, albums, journals, and then a big wall-sized bookshelf that's also full. I will be scanning for the rest of my life. But because of that, I have learned a lot of things the hard way because I'm trying to make these precious items available to the family I know and the family I don't know that are connected to the people in the photos. And so I've learned a lot over the years, and I love that class because I do 2 things really in there. I share the things I've learned the hard way, but I ask a lot of questions for the participants to consider to help them really think through what are their sharing objectives, and then to help them learn to assess the strengths and limitations of the various websites that they might choose to use to preserve those items. Because the worst thing is to put all of your eggs in one basket. If you only use one online service for your preservation and then it goes out of business, or maybe it's a subscription service and when you pass away nobody continues to pay for it, you've just spent years of your life on something that nobody can ever access again. So we talk about the different website options and how to decide which one is best for you and choose more than one. So it's a really natural class for me to teach, and I'm so excited to be able to share all of that hard-earned knowledge at RootsTech again.
Well, I'm looking at your blog here and I'm seeing that you are teaching that on Wednesday morning. So you are first thing in the morning at 9:30 a.m., first day of the conference.
Yes.
And I don't believe that we have a conflict. So I am going to be there because I would love to hear your entire presentation. I think we all have got those photos and we just wonder if we're doing enough to share those and preserve them. So I'm excited to come learn from you. And
Oh, great.
maybe we'll have to have you return as a guest and share your ideas after the conference.
I would love that.
That would be really fun to do an entire episode kind of based on your topic of preserving photos, because we haven't really done a lot with that on the podcast yet. And I'm sure our listeners would love that.
That would be great. I would love it.
Oh, fun. Well, this has been a really great chat with you, Amberly. Thank you for sharing with us all of your advice and all of your experiences with RootsTech and genealogy education. And I think everyone's going to be excited to go and take a fresh look at their next steps for learning and going to conferences and doing study groups and things. So thank you for your interview today.
Thanks for having me.
All right, everybody. We'll talk to you guys again next week, and we hope that you have a great week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Research Like a Pro with Diana Elder, accredited genealogy professional, and Nicole Dyer. We hope that something you heard today will help you make progress in your own genealogy research. If you like what you heard, please leave us a review on iTunes or Stitcher, or visit our website, familylocket.com, to contact us. You can find our book, Research Like a Pro, A Genealogist Guide, on Amazon.com and other booksellers. We hope you'll start now to research like a pro.